Just say I'm excited for Night Teeth. I did see a little bit about that and the recent casting. How far are you through that?
In a way, we were lucky. We shot about 80% of the film in New Orleans, and we flew back to LA to do the last couple of weeks, and that's when everyone locked down. So in that way, we managed to get all of the big action, all of the stuff with like hundreds of backgrounds. The problem is that the stuff in LA, it's like the basic premise is it's moving from different, one night moving across LA, a driver and two kind of strange passengers. So it's not an easy one to get up and running in COVID era. It's not like going to shoot in a warehouse or something. It's literally shooting all over LA.
Was the budget for that one bigger than the previous titles, or how did it play about?
It's much bigger,
Yeah.
thankfully. I mean, yeah. I mean, I can only say that because it's my fourth film, and the first three were, all small and different. I mean, my very first film, Level Up, was 400,000.
Yeah.
iBoy was, $1.5 million, and then ICU ended up being about three. It was about.
Wow.
I think it was 2.3 when we were shooting, and then it went up in post because various reasons, But so this one was definitely, I was able to have more toys, but you run into the same problems. It's never enough. It's still about compromising and figure things out, around the constraints.
That's all a part of the charm of filmmaking, isn't it? Just problem solving and trying to get everything to work.
Exactly, I love it. That's it's great fun doing that.
Yeah, absolutely.
What would you be doing if you weren't a filmmaker, you reckon?
Well, that's a good question, because I've had that thought, like loads of times in my career, because, it's hard and things fall apart and you don't have any money. I mean, I haven't had money, you earn a bit of money, and then especially on these low budget films, and then you're not working for a year, and so you start looking at like, well, what can I do in between? And you realize like you have no skills other than filmmaking. Your CV is an embarrassment. It's like my CV is a list of credits. You know what I mean? It's not like I worked. So, I don't like, in terms of what could I do if I had to? I mean, I'd be really in trouble. I sometimes I look at my friends who had sort of went for easier careers, or perhaps like slightly more normal careers, and even though filmmaking has its huge highs, like they had mortgages and holidays and whatever while I was still pissing about making short films. So there's definitely something to be said for the easier life, I think.
So going back to ICU, which is what we both are reviewing and watched this week, I really, really enjoyed it. It came out of nowhere for me. I was just stumbled upon it on Netflix, heard a few things from friends. Tell us a little bit about how this came about and your experience working on the film.
Sure. Well, it was actually the sales company were based in the UK. So Matt Waldick, the producer, had been working on it for I think like maybe even 5 years, trying to get it made. And I think there was a director at one point, and that didn't work out. So because it was a UK sales company, they knew me off the back of iBoy, and they said, look, we'd love you to have a look at the script. It's we're talking to Helen Hunt, and it looks like we're all set to go, and we want to shoot it in like 10 weeks. And I read the script, and I was like, holy shit, the script is great. Like they're ready to go. This is like too good to be true. As I spoke to Matt the next day, and I sort of told him my thoughts about it and my take on it, and he was really excited and sort of said, oh, he wanted me on board on the call. And everything was great and moving forward very quickly. And then everything fell apart, basically, and all the money fell out, and it didn't work out. I got my visa. We were about to move to the US, with my family. We got, told the landlord that we were moving out, and, I ended up sort of standing outside my house with my kids, with, going,
kidding.
what do I?
That's insane.
Yeah, I mean, honestly. Yeah, we genuinely were really fucked, for want of a better word.
Far out.
And we so we didn't know what to do. So we actually, this is digressing a bit, but we realized we better get an Airbnb, and then we thought, well, why get an Airbnb in England? We might as well go somewhere else, Yeah. So I read that Denmark was the happiest country in the planet. So we went off to Denmark. In a cabin in the woods, and just were like, what do we do? And then we, with my wife and I, we sort of said, well, let's go to LA anyway. You know, we've got a little bit of savings. Let's go out there. Hopefully ICU will get built back up, and we just got to go for it. You know, take the gamble. And
Wow.
and then, you know, this was like the summer of 2017, and then I think it was October 2017. We went to AFM. I went with Matt, and we met a couple of financiers, and we got some more interest. And slowly it built back up again. It was a slightly lower budget. I'd also met Helen, and you know, we really agreed on the sort of the direction we wanted to take the script and her character. So
she was already in.
She was in depending on the director, basically. She liked the script, but she had sort of trepidations about it. I think she you know, she'd never done a horror film. She was really worried it was going to be, you know, because it could easily be a bit, you know, silly. Maybe some people think it is a bit silly, but you know, certainly like the script that I read had a lot more sort of jump scares and bangs and you know, and that sort of thing. And she was just wasn't sure. And one of my big things was I really wanted to take all that stuff out. I thought the script was already smarter than that. You know, it didn't need that. So you know, we really yeah, with Helen, and then you know, Matt managed to pull some finance back in, and we built it back up again, and managed to get it made. It was, you know, it was a low budget film. It was shot it in 20 days.
I still can't believe that 20 days.
That's insane. 20 days.
Yeah, that was, and I, you know, it was originally 25 until I think a week before the shoot, when they had to cut 5 days out of the shoot because it had gone over budget. So, I mean, 25 is a struggle, you know. So that was really that was tough.
What did you learn from that 20-day shooting experience? Because that sounds tight. It must have been one wild ride. How did you kind of grow from that?
You sort of learn to, I guess, first of all, to prioritize and to try and figure out what you think will be on the edit room floor before you even shoot it, you know? So really distilling what the film is. Also, like, you know, what's important. And then I guess, how do you still, you know, I really wanted to shoot this in a specific way. I had my shot list figured out, you know, because it's so specific, the film, all the little clues and little details. So, so I wanted to just sort of figure out, well, how can I make sure that I can still get all of that despite it being 20 days, you know? So just sort of, which is, you know, it's useful coming from a kind of low budget indie background, because that's what you do, you know. Everything is about hustling and cheating. And, you know, my first film, we went and, you know, we shot in Chinatown in central London, so we had background of, you know, 5,000 people, even though you weren't legally allowed to do that. And you know, we just sort of you figure things out, you know. So I guess that was it, you know, really sort of figuring out, how can I still get those shots and that mood, you know, how can I still hopefully, you know, because an audience doesn't care what the budget is. That, you know, if it looks terrible or feels hokey, then they're not gonna go, oh well, you know, good on them, they tried. You know what I mean? They're just gonna be like, this is shite, and turn it off. So
yeah, for sure. They're certainly very unforgiving. Adam, I love that some of these subtle details that went into this film, and I like here that you mentioned that the script had even more of these jump scares, and you kind of wanted to tear them out. I see it as a very subversive mystery picture, especially for something to be released on a popular streaming service like Netflix, which it is here in Australia. I noticed that you had a bit of a history as a script reader. So what drew you to this project? What about it kind of had you on board thinking, this is the movie I want to make?
How are we with spoilers on this podcast? Because it's hard to talk about the film without
going to spoilers.
Adam, you're the guest.
In fact,
take it away.
Take it away, mate.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I think like we just got to say, like, we're going to just ruin the film now, yeah, because I think otherwise
please go for it.
Around things so much. So please, if you're listening, you know, watch the film first, because yeah, I'm about to completely ruin it for you. So what? So I mean, I think what I loved about it is what I think, you know, most people love about it initially, which is the roller coaster ride and the twists and turns and how surprising it is, you know. I always love a film that sort of, you think, is this supernatural, and then it ends up not being, you know. I always find that kind of satisfying. That it's sort of actually about the monsters in reality, you know, rather than something sort of created. And it was slightly different, the shift that happens halfway through, but it was the same premise, that you suddenly flip perspective and, you know, you're back at the beginning of the story with completely new characters. And so, you know, just that I thought was so interesting. And, you know, and what it allowed was, you know, is not just jumping back in time and not just jumping to different characters, both of which you kind of have seen before, but it actually allows you to change genre, to change style, like literally just, it's a different film, but it's the same story, and I thought that was hugely sort of satisfying. And then actually, all of the twists, that was all in the script I read, the reveal of, of who the abductor is, and the reveal of why at the very end, all of that. And I remember, that night lying in bed and just suddenly go, oh my God, that's why she said that. And that's why, it's like, it really sort of stuck with me. And I just thought it was really clever. And I thought that it really highlighted, I made judgments about the characters very quickly. I was on Team Greg, I was like, Jackie, she had an affair. I feel sorry for Greg and his son. And,
that was
I made
me.
these very quick judgments. Yeah. I mean, as we all do with everything in life. And and what's so clever about the script is that it, you realize that you didn't know what you were seeing. It was just about perspective. So that was hugely exciting. And then as a filmmaker, I felt like the script was sort of, or it allowed it to be about filmmaking. It was about, what do you show the audience? It was about when do you cut a scene? I mean, especially as I started to break down how I was going to shoot it, it was like, I wanted to use the same, the same shot, but you just start it 8 seconds later in the second half. You pan to the right when you hadn't in the second, just little things that just change the perspective, like the whole stuff with Greg marching around the house with his gun. In the first half, he's your hero, and you're like, oh my God, it's scary. There's a guy in the house. It's a classic kind of thriller. And then you see it again, and you realize, oh, there's a dead girl on the floor, and he's a monster, and the guy that you're terrified of, that you think is like this, sort of slasher archetype, is actually in a way your protagonist, and he's the hero of the film. So it's just a really creative, fun, puzzle.
Albeit a very dark and twisted hero, right? It's kind of hard to root for anyone, but that's part of the charm.
It's a very dark film. I think that's partly, like you get away with that in independent, low budget films. Like it's so, when you actually think about it, by the end, every character in it is either dead or in therapy for the rest of their life. even like Spitsky, like this cop is about to retire. And then like the guy who's been hunting for his whole life is actually his part, and then his boss, like everybody. But in a way, that's sort of what it's about, right? It's like about one man's horrendous warped desires and the ripple effect that has on so many people that you wouldn't even expect. Obviously the victims, but the family and the colleagues. And,
Was this shot in chronological order? Obviously not.
Definitely not. And, mainly because of cast schedule. Like Helen, like she came in for like 8 days or something like that. So it was like, you had to work it around that. And John Tenney was, and he was shooting True Detective at the same time. And HBO had a lot more sway than we did, So we'd be like,
you don't say.
We'd be saying, we'd be going, we need him this day, and they'd be like, shut the fuck up, we're gonna have him. So we had to work it around, that main, and also we shot all the house first. It's 15 days we shot the house, and then 5 days for the stuff around the house. So sometimes I'd shoot, Helen and John, and then I'd shoot Lee Bay, perspective of that, in the same day or the same, like the basement. So
that's what I was getting at.
But often not, annoyingly. Sometimes it would be 2 weeks apart. I'd shoot the scene and then I'd shoot, Owen's perspective or whatever, and it would be 2 weeks later. So that was tricky. Continuity wise.
Adam, I wanted to ask you a question here. So for an actor like John, so he's shooting True Detective and shooting your film, I See You, at the same time. That's got to be a really dark shoot, and it seems like a lot of these tense, darker sequences would have been pretty full on set. How did you keep things lighthearted?
It's a good question. I mean, I think I just sort of naturally do, and I don't know if that's the best thing for the actors. You'd have to ask them. But I mean, as I sort of talking about at the beginning, like, because like my career it's been tough, it's been tough to make films. I think for most people it's tough to make films, like, and there's a lot of sort of pain and suffering involved in it. So by the time I got to make my first film, I really feel like I have to enjoy it, and everybody has to enjoy it. We've got to do great work and be fulfilled, but also like it should be a joyous experience. Like there should be no room for assholes or pointless stress. Like ultimately, like we're not saving the world, we're making a movie. So like I want it to be, and I also see respect if an actor needs to go into their own space, and but generally I want the set to be a place of fun, and calm. So, and someone like John, he just switches it on. There's some actors like that, like Maisie in iBoy. She would be chatting and laughing, and then I'd call action and she'd start crying. I mean, it was just like one of these amazing things. You just go, it's like magic, And there are other actors, Owen a little bit more, because his character, he had to get into some very dark places. He might need, to be in a sort of his own space, or to be sort of, have a long conversation about something leading up to it. So, it all depends on how they work, really. But John's was really a very tricky performance. I think it was amazing, because you want to suspect everybody but him. But the fact that you don't suspect him, you worry is going to make you suspect him. If you know what I mean?
I did
absolutely.
It's
yeah, exactly. So and then it's got to make sense when you watch it back. Like, oh, you see, he's like this, and the way that he kind of sometimes just stares at someone a little bit too long, or the way he reacts to being told something by his lieutenant or by his partner. Like when you watch it back, hopefully you're like, oh God, like that was kind of obvious, But at the same time, you want to totally believe it in the moment. So it's like it's difficult for me, because I'm watching it both trying to be a first-time viewer and a second-time viewer. But it's incredibly challenging for him, because he's actually got to do it,
It'd be a fascinating rewatch. I might have to go back to get the different perspective. Switching back to iBoy, can you talk us through what it was like to work with Maisie and your experience on that? I'm guessing she's a sweetheart.
Yeah, she was. She was brilliant. I mean, it was just like one of those sort of joyful experiences. She's so talented. And so sort of fully involved, and it was really fun, because she and Bill Milner became really, really close. Actually moved in with each other as like best friends. I think they still might live together. they became like really, really close. And then all the kind of villains, the gang, the bad gang, they all became such good friends. So for them, it was like a really fun experience of hanging out with people their age, And she was just, great, really. That was actually a long process, that one. I got sent the book, and it was 4 years later that we were actually shooting it. It was a really long struggle to get that made. And when we first approached Maisie, she couldn't do it because of Game of Thrones, but then it kind of fell apart and came back to her. And then eventually, it was about 3 weeks before we started, we went back to her, and she was clear, so she came on board, and I sort of can't imagine it now without her.
I want to get your take quickly on the Game of Thrones ending. What were your thoughts on the last season?
I mean, like, I was a little disappointed, I have to say. Like, I'm not going to say anything that 100 people haven't already said. It felt like, I don't know why they squeezed it into so few episodes.
Yeah.
I think the idea of it and Daenerys turning, I think it was great. It was really clever and could have been really satisfying, and there were some amazing episodes, and Miguel Sapochnik, who does the huge battle episode, some incredible elements to it, such great cast. But it just suddenly felt like, especially as I remember earlier seasons, thinking like, what, it's just taking so long, nothing's happening. Get to it, and then when it actually gets to the juicy bit, it's like speeds by. So but I mean, I think it's to take that on, to be the actual creative behind that, I mean, it's such a huge project. I can't even imagine, and then the pressure of just the world on them,
yeah, can't imagine. Going back to I See You again, the concept of phrogging, this is the first time I even knew it existed. Were you the same, or?
Yeah. When someone first mentioned it, I thought it was something much stranger. I was sort of relieved that it was that. It was. And then I sort of, looked it up and Googled it, and there were videos on YouTube. I don't know if they're still up, but, of people apparently phrogging. I sort of don't quite buy the videos, but you never know. And then,
probably fake.
Exactly. I mean, I'd heard stories of, someone who kept noticing their food was going missing for months, and then realized that their ex-boyfriend was living in their house. Or like, there's a famous one of a homeless guy who's been living in the attic for, 6 months, and things like that, but not like almost as a sport. in this way. So, but I think for Devon, that's where he heard about frogging, and that was the first spark, and then he sort of pieced this all together from that.
Yeah, it makes it quite chilling. Adam, we wanted to ask you, what was your experience like at South by Southwest when this film kind of had its premiere there last year? It must have been pretty surreal having the red carpet treatment alongside Helen and John there.
Yeah, it was, it was amazing. It was, iBoy, because it was Netflix, just sort of landed on Netflix. It's a sort of strange experience. You spend, it was almost 5 years, I think, by that point. And then it's just on Netflix, and it's like, oh God, that's it. And actually, in a way, it's great because the reaction's so sudden, so quick. It's not, and you can see people almost in real time watching it and get that feedback. But it's also like, oh, that's, moving on then. So it was really nice to get to experience like the first screening of it, sitting with an audience, getting their reactions. I'm really like exciting, waiting for that flip halfway through, just to sort of feel it in the room, Also terrifying, obviously, because you don't know if everyone's just going to hate it. But it was great, and it's incredible. I've never been to Austin, which is just the most amazing city, and like everyone was just so passionate about going to see films and music, and the film went down really well. So it was great. I was in such a high, like an unbelievable high, and then we did a sort of little Q&A afterwards, and and all the cast were really happy. And then the first 2 reviews came in, and they were really bad.
Oh.
They were really, yeah. And I remember just like getting back to the hotel room and just sitting there going, oh shit. Like, and you don't know if like, that's it then. Is everybody you're going to just get uniformly bad reviews? Oh no, that's it. Oh my God. Like all of this, I really thought maybe we had something quite special, and actually everyone's going to hate it. And then, some good ones came in, and it's like, okay, fine. As long as it balances out, and it seems like more people like it than don't. I think it was always going to be a film that frustrated some audience members, because it's, people who are hoping it's a horror film and then are slightly disappointed by that, or, but on the whole, it seems to have gone down pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. It's hardly a conventional movie, and I love how that perspective shifts and the focus changes from each character. And as you mentioned, Adam, we kind of see that same day. There's some different shots and angles and framing. It must have been really difficult to kind of get that balance right while making an engaging experience for audiences. So can you take us through your vision and your process there?
Yeah, I actually found it, hugely satisfying figuring out how to do that puzzle in a way, that sort of jigsaw, and what to show, and how to create a certain mood, and certain shots of like Jackie just coming home, and how to make her, her driving into her garage, getting her shopping, putting it in the fridge. How do you make that weird and frightening? Sort of, and how do you make that feel like somebody's watching her? And so that was really, really nice. And there were lots of little details in the script, but lots of things we had to change because the script was so specific that unless we built the house, we were never going to be able to do how it outlined things. It's really specific in that the bathroom was next to the guest room, and that's where they were staying, and they could, and we found it a really great house, and none of that worked. So suddenly it's like, okay, we need to rethink loads of these little details. So that was sort of part of the challenge of it, really. The worry I had is that because it's trying to play like a conventional supernatural horror film for the first sort of half an hour or so, and especially the first kind of 20 minutes, really like it's very sort of slowly paced and slow burn and creepy, and it's using certain cliches, sort of purposefully, and they're not the most exciting horror moments. It's a TV turning on, or it's a hamster running down a hallway. So you just want the audience to hold on, because that it ramps up, and when it ramps up, it doesn't kind of stop. But it was trying to make that first part engaging. At the same time, you don't really get to know these characters, because you can't get to know them truthfully. You're always going to feel a little distant from them. So it's just trying to balance all these things out, really.
Yeah, one scene I really like was, I think it was Jackie, Helen Hunt's character. She looks under the bed, or was it Connor? And you see this monkey mask, and that appears Jackie, on the Jackie, yeah, it appears on the poster as well. It's so creepy. Did you get to keep this monkey mask?
Yeah, I did. You know, it's sort of supposed to be a frog, even though I
Oh,
I
so
totally agree. It
frog.
sort of looks like a monkey.
Sorry,
Yeah.
guys.
No, that's fine. It's fine. It has got a monkey because I didn't want it to be like it was written as an emoji frog mask, you know, and then sort of started to try and figure out how can it be weird and frightening, but also something that you'd actually buy in
So
like, a
creepy.
market. So I didn't get to keep it, and then about a month ago, maybe 6 weeks ago, I got one in the post, and the producer had got me one, which was very kind of him, so I can freak my kids out. Yeah, but yeah, that's one of those moments when you actually break it down. You think, Alec's been lying there with the mask on
Yeah.
for like 6 hours. You know, I mean, Connor's gone to bed. You know, he's lying there, whatever, like for hours and hours, and this guy's just underneath him the whole time. You know,
it's
so
horrible.
unsettling.
Yeah. What was it like to work with Helen Hunt? You know, did she bring the Oscar to set at any time?
Unfortunately, not. I asked every day. It was amazing. You know, she's sort of so committed, and we met a lot beforehand because I was living in LA, as I said, you know, before we went over to Ohio. So you know, we'd meet up in cafes and things, and we'd just sit and talk through it and talk through every line, you know, and everything sort of not only had to make sense to her, you know, and to her character, but had to evolve. Like, you know, there'd be certain things in the script, and we'd look at it and we'd be like, isn't this sort of the same beat that you've already had 10 minutes before? You know, how can this be different? The other thing I said to her, which she didn't see in the script, and she didn't believe it could happen, and who knows if it does, but I said to her, I really want at some point the audience to suspect you're the one, you know, that you're the crazy person, you're the one abducting, you know, so you know, can we, you know, have certain moments where the suspicion falls on you, you know, certain little details, certain things we can do. So we looked at that, and there were little things that we did on, you know, on set that we hoped would sort of, you know, just for a moment, I had this whole sort of concept that maybe you could start to theorize, oh, it's like a Jekyll and Hyde, and she's sort of self-medicating and drinking a lot, and she's sort of flipping personalities, you know, and like in the middle of the night, she's wandering around the house, you know, ripping bedclothes clothes off and freaking out her son, you know, and then she wakes up next morning and can't even remember it, you know, like that's it. That it could be that, the film, you know, and I was hoping that, you know, at least some audience members they'd be like, I know what this is. It's her. She's crazy, you know. So like to try and do that, but also to make it sort of her character truthful, because she's ultimately like, even though you don't really see it, you don't get it till the end. Like she's the heart of it, and she's been living with this man, and you know, subconsciously knows what he is, you know, and so is driven to such despair that she's medicating, she's drinking, she has an affair with literally the polar opposite of him, like this cuddly teddy bear of a man, you know.
I noticed
she's doing anything to, but you know, and it's buried so deep, so she's just got this sort of growing trauma in her, you know. So anyway, long answer to say it was a great experience working with her.
No, that's awesome, Adam. I love some of these points here that you've raised about how she is the heart, and it's less the supernatural monster and more that monster in the closet and the skeletons that live inside the closet that could be going on in any home, and especially in a wealthy home. And we see the Phroggers come in with Alec and Mindy, and they kind of play it up like, look at how these wealthy people live. They have all this money, and this is the stuff they choose to buy. I feel like with Jackie's character, and we want to hear your take on what went into the production, the score and the soundscape that is in this film just adds so much dread, and everything seems so grim. And at times it kind of feels like the music's closing in on the movie. What went into the production, and how did that unfold to get this awesome music?
Well, in terms of of getting Will, I mean, that came in late in the process. As in, like, we're already pretty far through the edit when we started to try and get someone on board. And, you know, we did it. We went out to a few composers, and we got some demos, and he did one. And, you know, just to say how good he is, like the demo he did, I gave him the scene where she drives past the search party, and then it goes into the woods and they're burying, and So he did this kind of 6-minute sequence. And what's in the final film is pretty much what he did in the demo. You know, it was just so great. So, and he's got a very particular style. He takes, you know, he'd send me things and say, this is a piece of bamboo that I whacked into my clothes hanger or something, you know, listen to this. And then I'd listen to it and be like, that's amazing, you know. So he'd come up with all these incredible sounds, and then we try and form them into sort of really subtle little melodies that could be repeated and that had connotations, you know, of the past, or there'd be, you know, her Jackie's theme. But really it was about creating this sense of utter sort of heavy foreboding over the film, you know, this real sense of unease and this sort of monster among us, you know, in a way that the score is the monster, you know, for a lot of it, like, you know, because you don't see anything, you know, especially at the beginning when you're just creeping around. It's the score that's sort of the sound of this being that we don't know what it is, and then obviously we find out that the being is, you know, is him.
Yeah, it's tense. It's really cool. It's as you said, Adam, it kind of it is the start of the film, and by the end it's the score kind of becomes the monster there. So you're living in LA at the moment again, as you said, and you're here in lockdown, and we're in lockdown as well in Melbourne, in Victoria and Australia. I want to ask, other than catching up for coffee with Helen Hunt, which sounds pretty awesome, what's been some of your highlights living in around Tinseltown?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really strange this time because I came here because the film I'm doing, Night Teeth, is set here. So, you know, I landed and was scouting locations, and then I went off to New Orleans for 4 months and then landed back in LA and have been basically in the house since then. So it's been a sort of strange experience. I mean, the first time I came out here, it was obviously just the joy of like going to meet all these producers and executives in, like, you know, walking into Paramount Studios, walking into Warner Brothers, you know, like all the stuff that like you sort of dream about. You know, it's just so incredible. So yeah, there's that sort of fantasy, you know, and it is a little bit of a fantasy because a lot of you're meeting about, you know, like you're just meeting and you come out of there going, oh my God, like, that's it. They love me. My career's made. Like,
I'm done. This is it.
And then, you know, not much happens. You know, probably sometimes it does, but on the whole, it doesn't. Just because, you know, that's the way it goes. But yeah, experiencing that, you know, especially when, you know, coming into the industry in the UK, and it's much smaller, you know, and it hasn't got the sort of that sense of sort of glamour, you know, in the way that it does here. So yeah, that's been great. But actually looking at shooting here and really looking at the city in that way has been really fascinating because it's such a incredible place and it's so diverse, and, you know, it's like lots of little cities, you know, and they're all so different, and the people are different, and the fashion and music is different depending on where you are, even if it's 20 minutes apart, you know.
Oh, for sure, 100%. We wanted to ask, Adam, you bring up there how it's a bit of a different flavor, and you must have learned a lot across your career now, having made 4 feature films. What's some advice you might have for young aspiring filmmakers out there who are listening to our show, the We Watch This Movie podcast, or maybe even some advice for yourself at 25?
Yeah, I get asked this sometimes. You know, I mean, the first thing I say, which is sort of not supposed to be depressing, but I think it's useful to say, is like, make sure that it's what you absolutely want to do and have to do. Like, it's just, you've got this desperation to do it, because I think that, you know, there are obviously filmmakers that you see who just smash it early, and just like they come at their first movie, you know, Animal Kingdom, for example, you know, or La Haine or Donnie Darko or whatever, you know, and you're just like, wow, holy shit, that's just like,
how did you do
this? God. Yeah. But on the whole, you know, it's much more of a sort of struggle, and you have to sacrifice certain things in your life that your friends around you won't be sacrificing because they've got jobs and holiday pay. You know, holiday pay is such a foreign idea. You know, you get paid for being on holiday, you know? So I think, first of all, like, you know, you've got to, you know, be sure that's what you want to do, you know, and not that you want to do, because being involved in film, you know, being in the camera department, or, you know, an editor, I mean, there's so many incredible roles, you know, and I think that, you know, certainly for me, like, I always thought as a teenager, as the director, you want to be the director, you know, and in a way, like, it is your vision and you're the center of it in certain respects. So, you it is an amazing job, but as is being a camera operator, it's just incredible. I look at the camera operator sometimes with such envy, that they are just, focusing on this shot and it's great and they haven't got all the other stuff to deal with, so I think it's, really learning about all the different roles, that come together. And then it's, it's sort of obvious, but it's making stuff, and it's not sort of waiting around, it's just sort of trying to find ways of making short films, of learning the craft, of if you can, making a low budget feature film, obviously you have a lot of power if you write, or if you know a writer, who writes you a script and that script is really good, then you're in a great position. If you're waiting around for someone to send you a script, that can be really tough and long. So I think it's just being as proactive as possible. And not being disheartened if your first film isn't, Badlands or Reservoir Dogs, because most people's aren't. And I actually feel like it's almost unfair, this new perspective that like it's supposed to be, because back in the day, you'd start and you'd work on B movies, you'd work for Roger Corman or something, and you'd make a load of films. And when you were sort of good enough, then you'd make something worthy, But before then, it was training. And I think it's incredibly difficult now if you're supposed to make a first film and it's like, oh, was that great? If not, that's your career done, And it's like, that surely shouldn't be how it is. So I think if you, don't put all your expectations on your first film necessarily, if it, because you're learning. So just keep going, keep fighting the fight.
Yeah, I love it. There's something to be said there about being consistent. And I love the point you make about Roger Corman. I'm pretty sure Stanley Kubrick might have made a Corman movie. And didn't James Cameron make like a Piranha sequel 2. Or something?
Yeah, Piranha 2. And I mean, Scorsese made 2 films before Mean Streets. And I think Tarantino made like 3/4 of the film that fell apart before he made Reservoir Dogs. Something like that.
Yeah, I think was that My Best Friend's Birthday? It was like a short film or something?
I'm not sure, but even like I remember watching Saulnier's, Blue Ruin. God, that's fucking amazing. What a great first film. And then you look and it's like, oh, he'd already made 1 or 2 films before then. Yeah, I mean they might be great as well. I'm not sure. I haven't seen them yet. But you get that idea of like you just work. You don't need to put everything on that. I think take that pressure off yourself. Because I had that pressure on me, and then I can be totally honest now because I'm on my 4th film. My first film is no masterpiece. Not that I don't want anyone to watch it, but it was at a time where I got sent the script, and it was actually my agent said to me, "Are you in a position, Adam, to be turning everything down?" Which was a really nice way of saying, "What the fuck are you doing?" take something. So I sort of got the script, and I thought, okay, well, I tried to rework it into something that I felt.
Yeah.
That could really work. And there are things in it I'm really proud of, and South Korean influence and all that, trying to make it sort of mad and funny and colorful.
Yes.
But as a whole, it doesn't necessarily fully work, or it's not, amazingly fresh, or So I didn't, I always wanted to be Tarantino or make Hard 8 or whatever. And
who doesn't?
My first film, yeah, right. And my first film wasn't that, and it was received okay. Universal took it and distributed it, so that was really cool. But the reviews were sort of mixed, But you just got to go, okay, well, on to the next one, and I'll get better, and then hopefully, hopefully you make films that really connect with an audience, So.
Speaking of directors, me and Jackson have a long-going debate on this podcast. Who's better, Nolan or Lynch? Where are you on that side of the fence?
Wow, indeed.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Although it's tough, I prefer Lynch. Like as a, I mean, I think Lynch has had such a profound. Yeah, he's had a profound impact on cinema. I mean, so has Nolan. I mean, they're so different. Like they're both incredible, and Chris Nolan probably has the most enviable career in Hollywood, right? Like, sure. I mean, that only comes because of his amazing skills. It's not like we're like, if I could be Nolan. Like he's so specific, and that he can make films that personal and smart on like the biggest canvas you can is incredible, And and I will like rush to see his films, like everyone, And the fact that like all it is it's his film and that's enough. It's not like, oh, you need some huge star in it, or it's just like it's a Chris Nolan film, and that in itself guarantees that it's going to be interesting and incredibly well done cinematic. I think that is amazing. But Lynch is like the effect that his films and TV has had on me is like profound, in a different way, So if I had to pick, I would go with him.
Well, we'll let you go in a second, Adam. We just want to ask you quickly. We ask everyone this: what have you been watching lately, and what would you recommend to our listeners to check out in the last few months?
God, I mean, what makes that so hard? It's just been watching so much because it's this lockdown. I watched Midnight Run the other day. The De Niro film from the 80s, which is just perfect. It was like a joy to watch it. I know that's going back. I just started Watchmen. I know I'm a little late to it, but that's great. I thought Devs was amazing. Just incredible TV series. I mean, it's almost like because there's been too much. I've been trying to watch a lot of sort of easy stuff. I think because the world is so
take the weight off.
Yeah, because it's so sort of horrendous out there, and there's been something about watching a lot of popcorn stuff. That's been. I watched Lord of the Rings again, which was really satisfying to escape into that world for 12 hours. Yeah, I'm going to come off this and be like, why? That's what I've been watching, and I love it. I can't think right now, but yeah. Devs would be my recommendation that I can think of right now of something new that's come out that I thought was incredible.
So when can we see Night Teeth? When are we? Because I'm really looking forward to it. When is that scheduled?
Thank you.
Next year?
Well, we need to finish it. So we're supposed to be shooting in mid-August. That's been pushed because the situation here isn't good, obviously. So hopefully we'll finish the shoot by around October. So the film will be completely done by spring next year, early summer. So I imagine it's not going to be. It's a shame because it was going to be. They were even talk about really trying to push it to release it at the end of this year. And then obviously there's been such a delay now. So it'll probably be like, autumn next year. It's very different to ICU. It's like really fun and loud and colorful and just like, I just sort of let loose completely and gone a bit nuts with it.
Awesome. We can't wait to see
Sounds fantastic. It's going to be our kind of movie.
I hope so.
We'll have to get you back on when it releases next year.
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Thanks for joining us, Adam. Really appreciate your time. Stay safe and healthy, and we will talk to you soon, mate.
All right. Thanks so much, guys. Take it easy.